I'm super excited to talk to Fawn Weaver today. Now, you have a few titles, serial entrepreneur, author, historian, and wife. What's the hardest job out of those?
Entrepreneur by far. The wife part is actually pretty simple. The entrepreneur, the serial entrepreneur is the part that is a little insane.
Okay. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur, and kind of how did you find out that's what you wanted to do?
I always have been an entrepreneur. So I began my first company at 18. It was just what fit for me. My entire life I've kind of just followed the path that light up. And that is, I started a PR and special events firm when I was 18. So now that's 27 years ago, right? So this has just been my particular path. I don't know that I made any decision. I think I just kind of fell into it. And then it's just the way that I've continued to operate.
Starting a business at 18
Mhm.
is super rare.
Yeah.
What gave you the motivation or the idea to start your own company before it even got
Yeah.
started?
Yeah. I left home when I was 15. And so I sort of was already making a way for myself. And I worked at a few restaurants and a few, and the one thing that I noticed is that everywhere I went, I had a different level of motivation than the other people that were there, like including the general managers or whoever I was reporting into. I just had a different level. And so leaning into that, starting my own company is what legitimately made sense for me because finally I was like, oh, this is how this is supposed to work. This level of excellence, this level of drive, this is where this is supposed to be. And I was never going to find that in any type of corporate America or anything of that nature where people just kind of show up at work, clock in, do what they do, and really what they want to do is get home. For me, I wanted whatever I did all day long for me to enjoy that.
Okay. Why did you leave home when you were 15?
I grew up in a really, I'd say, religious household, would be the proper way to put it, and it just didn't work for me. That is, I just wasn't built for that. So,
Okay.
if you brought a scripture to me, not even a scripture, if you had some particular type of belief, I was going to challenge that belief because I need you to back it up for me. And as a kid, that doesn't necessarily work out if you have authoritarian parents, which most Black kids have authoritarian parents. And everything, it was like, well, you should do that. You need to do this. Why? Like I had a why. I was the why kid. And that just for my parents was like, it's our way or the highway. And that was the easiest decision I've ever made in my life. I was like, I'm out.
Okay. And so when you were 18 and you started this business, did you have a mentor? How did you know what steps
Never.
to take? How did you know what to do?
To this day, I've never had a mentor. To this day. Everything that I've ever done really truly is I am a voracious reader of books. And so there are so many great books out there where people have told you this is how I did it. These are the mistakes that I've made. And so for me, I think it's Warren Buffett, not I think, it's Warren Buffett who said, people always talk about the greatest teacher is life and making your own mistakes. And he's like, that actually is not. It's learning from other people's mistakes. That's the wiser decision. And so that's what I have done. I've looked at how other people have built their companies and the mistakes that they have made. And I do my best to avoid those. But going back to the very beginning, when I'm like writing business plans, this was something you have to go into the library to do. Like the young people now, I'm like, all y'all got to do is Google. Like
Yeah.
a bad business plan hits my desk and I'm somewhat unsympathetic because I'm like, they literally have templates for you at this point. When I was building business plans, I literally had to go into the library and pull out books that showed you how to lay out a business plan. And so for me, every teacher I've ever had, every single one has been from books, things that I've learned. And so you can go back to Carnegie, you could go back to Mellon, Rockefeller, like those are just looking at all the mistakes that they made and the successes, right? DuPont and saying, all right, and learning from the reality is if you're learning from anyone who's succeeded greatly, pre-Oprah, they're
Hmm.
white dudes,
Yes.
period.
White men.
Right. So yeah, so pretty much every person who I learned from, which may be why I can walk into a boardroom that's filled with all white men and not blink, is because that that's what I learned from was how did y'all build this? How did you all structure this? And now it's just my own remixed version of it.
So this business that you start, your first business at 18, how long did that business last?
That lasted actually, let's see, G Garvin's came around when I was 22, so 4 years. So that was 4 years. And then there's a chef out of Atlanta named G Garvin. Do you know G?
Mhm.
Okay. So Jerry, he was Jerry then because it's
Okay.
spelled with a G.
Mhm.
And when Jerry was starting a restaurant for Keyshawn Johnson, Colt Rain.
Mhm.
And did you ever go in Beverly
Never.
Hills?
Mm-mm.
Okay. They put a great Keyshawn put so much money behind this build out. It was absolutely insane. And someone who worked for me knew Jerry and he was looking for someone to plan the event, the launch event. And I said, I'm stacked. I can't do it, but let me come to the restaurant and let me see how it's laid out and let me tell you what I would do and then just find somebody to execute it, somebody else. And I went to the restaurant and I looked around and the thing that just struck me was Jerry's personality. And this is before he became what he is now, right? He's always had that exact personality.
Mhm.
And so his personality struck me. Then he made me his food. And I'm like, oh, the brother can cook, like can cook.
Right.
And so after the restaurant opened, I began taking clients in there. And it
Oh,
was
okay.
we struck up a great friendship and relationship and he would see me bringing people in. I put him with some really big events like catering. He did the last event for Bill Clinton when he was president
Yep.
and for Hillary before she was running for senator and all that stuff. And so I put him with some top events and then he was decided he wanted to leave Rain. And he came to me, he's like, I don't want to go work for somebody else. I want to do this by myself, but this isn't my area of expertise. Like business, not my thing. I just want to be in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, I'll build the business plan for you, right? Because I had done a couple in my lifetime up until that point. I said, I'll do the business plan for you and then I'll help you raise the money. And so what ended up happening is I did the entire business plan. His name, G Garvin, that he goes off of, came from a branding exercise of calling the restaurant G Garvin's.
Okay.
That wasn't like he went by Jerry before that process. And so we opened the restaurant. It was wildly successful, stupid successful. Almost the success I think caused some problems because you'd make a reservation two months down the road because that's when you could get it, and you'd show up. There'd still be a 45-minute wait, which people think that's cool now. That wasn't cool then.
Right. Right.
It
Right.
was a problem, right? And so over time, it just kind of compounded. I think it got too big for its own self, but I was there with him overseeing that business for the first 4 years of it, I want to say. And I got married in that, I, I think maybe the third year of being a part of that. And Jerry's personality, God bless him, and he'll tell you this, which by the way, we're building out the world's longest bar at our distillery, and he is over the kitchen. Like he mapped out the entire kitchen, the entire menu. He hired the executive chef. So I say this with the utmost respect for this man. Dude was a hot mess. Dude was a hot mess. He'll tell you he was a hot mess. And when I decided I was going to marry my now husband of 19 years, almost 19 years, I told him, I said, Jerry, I'm going to marry this man, and no man is going to be comfortable hearing another man talk to their wife the way that you talk to me. Now, understand, I can hold my own. Doesn't bother me. Like it really, truly didn't bother me. Because if Jerry did, what these chefs who were trained in France, which he was,
Yes.
all the throwing of the pots and the yelling and the cursing and all the rest
Yes.
of that stuff,
Yeah.
that's what they do, right? But a husband
Yeah.
wasn't going to put up with that with a black man talking to his black wife. It just
Yeah.
wasn't going to happen. And I'll never forget it because it made me laugh so hard to this day. As I said, Jerry, no man is going to let another black man talk to his wife like that. And his response was, so I'm going to have a problem with this dude? That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So needless to say, that didn't last very long after I got married because I really had to make a decision there. And I made the decision to step away from that. But that's really the kind of the way that this went about. And then just kind of continued. And so after that, I began investing in other people. and just as I had with Jerry, and continued that until now. This is the first time where it's literally a company that I have founded where people also see my face. So that's yeah, that's a different one.
Let's talk about Uncle Nearest. What were your biggest fears in starting this particular business, or did you have any fears?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't call it a fear, but my biggest concerns were, number one, at the time, they're now worth 60 something billion, but at that time, Brown Forman was a $23 billion company. I was coming into a story that was so connected to their story that I had to be so careful in terms of my trademarks versus their trademarks. But I also had to lock things up so tight that should they have decided to really go full on missiles at me and my company, that we would still sustain.
Well,
And so,
So explain why could have particularly been an issue, Brown Forman.
well, if you think about it, so they own Jack Daniels. You have someone who's now telling a completely different story than the story that they had told since 1979. Now, when Jack was alive, and then when his nephew took over the distillery, and when his great nephews, the four of them, began running the distillery, the story of Nearest Green was always told at Jack Daniels. So this was not a new story at all as it relates to Jack's family. But a Brown Forman came in and purchased this in the late 50s, but they allowed Jack's family to continue running it. And so Jack's family continued to run it. Nearest's his life, and George Green, his son, and Eli Green, they were just a part of it. So all was well, for sure. And but you've got a company from Kentucky coming into Lynchburg, Tennessee, and you have some, smart guy at some point that is like, why are we telling this guy's story? All the focus needs to be on Jack. So let's get rid of every story that is not Jack. And so now you have me coming back close to 40 years later and saying, spotlight on your first master distiller. Like, that's all in someone's growth.
It is.
And so it wasn't like a tiptoe. I wasn't coming in tiptoeing. This was like full on. I want to put a spotlight on Nearest Green. So in the same manner that people talk about Jack Daniel and Johnny Walker and Jim Beam, they're talking about the first African-American master distiller. And so the likelihood that shots would be fired was high. Like, in my head, what I saw, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Spotlight, but that's what I saw in my head, of like how the Boston Catholic Church was like trying to do everything to block the story being told. That's what I was preparing for. And so I set up every defense possible. It was like, okay, if you do this, I'm going to do this. If you do this, I'm going to do this. And so I would say it's less of that it was a fear, and more of they can throw everything at me. If they sue me, I will run out of money more likely than not. Every person, all my friends and family who I raised money from, they would lose the money because they could stretch this thing out for years in the court, right? If that's the now, ultimately, I would prevail. From a PR standpoint, I would prevail, but at what cost?
Right. Okay.
So for me, that was the greatest challenge coming into this. And quite frankly, it could have gone a number of different ways.
Right. Obviously it could have, but it didn't, because we're here. At the beginning, and I feel like you touched on this a little bit. At the beginning, how did you finance it?
I raised just $3 million, not a whole lot.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the first portion of the finance, the first million, came from my husband and me. That was the first portion. And then we were raising on top of that. And so I raised $3 million from people who, I say friends and family, but they're not blood family. They're all people who we knew, who had been around, and they had the ability to take the risk, because there was a very, very, very high likelihood of loss on this one. It was either going to be great gain or great loss. There wasn't going to be an in between.
Right.
So every person who I raised from in those beginning days very clearly understood you could lose everything that you're putting in.
Okay. When I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, you all talk about raising money and raising capital. How did you know how to do that? Was this wasn't your first time raising money?
I had done it for G Garvin.
Mhm.
So this was something that I was already, I think with entrepreneurs, and this is just as a person who is now invested in a number of entrepreneurs, the business plans are usually, at least the ones I've gotten, garbage. Like there's no SWOT analysis. There's not looking at who's failed in this space. What are the likelihoods of failure? It's all very pie in the sky, comparing it to like the number of business plans that I have now seen from Black entrepreneurs coming in the spirit business that says, we're the next Uncle Nearest, but nothing else is in that business plan to support.
Right.
Just kind of, it's almost like you just show up and they will come. And so for me, my business plans have always been 40, 50 pages long, always. I'm going back to when I was 18. So my very first pitch, my investment pitch, very first one, I got funded before I was even halfway through the pitch, but the deck was phenomenal. And so I think that that's a piece when I hear entrepreneurs talking about their inability to raise capital, I go, send me your business plan. And without fail, I have never once received a solid business plan that did not get funded.
Did you know that at the beginning it was going to be a business that would need to have some financing behind it, have some money raised behind it? You already okay.
Yeah, because I almost didn't start the company because I knew how costly it would be. Now, I didn't know really how, but like at this point, I've raised over $100 million and I still have to do debt financing and all the rest of that.
Mhm.
What we're doing is incredibly costly, which is why in this particular industry, you have almost no one who holds on. Everybody sells because the big guys have really structured this industry in such a way where you either fail or you sell. Those are your two options. And
Yeah.
so what I'm doing really outside of Tito Beverage, who has Tito's vodka,
Mhm.
it really hasn't been done before. And the only reason he did it that way is nobody would fund him. Like he literally couch surfed for 7 years, maxed out every credit card he could get. And people don't know that backstory to that, but he could not. You got this white dude in Texas, couldn't get nobody to put money behind his vodka brand. Now it's worth, I don't know, $13 billion. And he's like, nope, why would I sell to you? You were not there for me. You didn't want to hear from me. You didn't. And so we're the only other brand and company in this industry that has even remotely is like what we're doing is Tito's.
Okay. I like Tito's too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How did you know when it was time to hire staff, like and expand? Because when you started off,
Wow.
it was just you
Oh, I
and
had some no, I had somebody from the very beginning.
mhm,
Very beginning. So I was invested in a lifestyle chain in California. And the person who I had brought into that for the VP of sales and marketing, she was phenomenal. And I was like, listen, I am working on this other project. I want to pull you over to this. Do you have, an interest in this? And so I always had her from day one. And
mhm,
then we hired a salesperson. So we had like this is very close to day one. So there was always basically three of us.
mhm.
But I will say that for the first year and a half, 2 years, we literally opened up all the markets. So every day we were on planes, opening up another market, doing GSM. So the sales pitches to the distributors. It was the three of us crisscrossing this country because I had decided I didn't want to do it like everyone else, which is let's start in one market, wait 4 years to try to get into the next market, and then continue to build from there. I was like, no, I don't have that much time. At that time, I was 40. I was like, if I'm going to build this into something like really, really, I'm not going one little city at a time. And so we expanded the fastest that really any independent has ever expanded in any area of spirits in America. I don't care what race. We were in all 50 states within the first 2 years.
How old were you when you started? You said you were 40 when you
Oh, I
started?
was I was 40 when I started. Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm
Uh,
45 now.
okay. How many employees do you have now?
Over 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you know, is there some sort of system in terms of like price point in terms of like your products? Is there this system that,
Yeah.
that kind of determines what makes sense?
Yeah. So for me, this is a running thing in our company. Is they're like, we got a KPI Fawn's gut because I go off of my gut for everything, almost every single thing that we have done that has been, in the industry, they've considered it an absolute game changer, has come off of my gut. Everybody coming into this said, do not expand that fast. You won't be able to do it. You're going to fail. And I was like, all 50 states. I gave that task to my chief business officer, all 50 states within the first couple of years. And there's a lot of stuff that we did. One was price point. So now where the market is for bourbon, we're actually considered like not lower tier, but we're not high. It's, but when we came out, we were considered really, really high. And people told us it won't sell there. You need to lower it. And they gave us all the reasons why it wouldn't sell there. And I was like, no, this is going to be the price point. This is what makes sense for the margins. And I am not going to come down later down the road and then need to raise my prices because I didn't plan well. So what I do see with a lot of entrepreneurs coming into this space is they price low, just wanting it to get into places, but then they get in and they can't raise it. So then their company fails because they didn't account for what the actual cost of the product would be. And so for me, I was like, this is the cost. So this is going to be the price. And now the ironic thing is that our brand is so popular that I keep getting distributors and different people in the industry going, so do you want to raise your price because you're sold out everywhere? And even now I won't do it because I was really confident in the price that we did to begin with. And just because we could raise it now because of the popularity, I'm not going to do it. And in a few more years, when the market isn't really supporting all these $100 bourbon bottles, I'm going to be that one who just stayed in the pocket, that our consumers were like, she never changed the price. She stayed consistent even when all my other brands were doubling in price. And we're building a fan base right here at this price point.
From the start of this business, did you pay yourself?
I've always paid myself, but very little. So to this day, I'm the lowest paid full-time employee.
Okay.
even now.
How do you determine or know what to pay your employees? What industry is, or?
Yeah, there's two things. So before, it was always whatever they made at their prior job, then just kind of going up a little from there, because it's, where you're coming from, it all just really depends. The price point is very different in terms of what that average is, depending on where you lived, where you were. So a sales job and this, so that's the way I've always done it. However, it was actually someone who said to me, this was probably about 2 years ago now, that said, that's the reason why women continue to be paid less. And I had never considered it, is because we start off at less coming into whatever industry we're in. We start off at less money. And then every job we go to subsequent to that, they ask us, what did you make at your last job?
Yeah.
And so I have stopped paying based on that. I look at, this is the job, this is our market, what is competitive, and then I pay. So some people have come to me and received really significant raises from where they were previously, because now I'm not looking at what did you make before. And that was really to try to create a parity with women when they're coming into my company, because my company is over 50% women, and just making sure that that parity was there. So the women in my company, they make more than the men.
Good.
And it's just because the roles that they're in, the compensation is in line with where it should be.
Right. I noticed with our business, when they're going back and forth about, salary and what to pay them and stuff like that, I noticed the women will fold quicker than the men all the time.
Number one, the women will fold sooner, drives me crazy. But the second thing is they won't even ask.
They won't.
Like, they will wait for you to tell them.
Yeah.
And that is something that we have to work on, because a lot of the pay disparity between men and women is because the men have no problem asking for something they are not entitled to at all. So it's like, they come in and they really should be making like maybe 75, and they'll ask for 140 in a heartbeat. Now they still may land at 75, but if you really, really like them and you really want them, you're going to end up paying them more because they asked for it.
Yeah.
And they're not just asking you for it, whoever they're interviewing with, they're asking them for it. Like they have no problem with that whatsoever. So I'm not sure why we as women have a challenge with that. But I do think that some of the pay disparity that's out there is going to work itself out when we have the boldness to say, this is what I'm worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the challenges you experienced. Do you
Yeah,
remember the first big hurdle that you kind of had to tackle with Uncle Nearest?
absolutely. Trademark. So
Okay.
I own the trademark, right? But it's a, it's a game of chess. You've got a really big guy on the other side who had 23 attorneys, and which for me it was perfectly fine. I hired literally the second best IP attorney in the country, is because I was like, there's a good chance we're gonna have to go toe to toe on this.
Right.
And the company is a pretty litigious company, meaning that they're just, as a general rule, they've usually sue first, ask questions later, because they
Yeah.
have so many lawyers on staff. And so I knew that we had to be so incredibly strategic in how we did every aspect of what we did in that regard to secure and maintain the trademarks and to go without opposition. And that was no joke, to say the least.
Okay. This is and we talked about it before. This is a white male dominated industry. I worked
Hmm.
actually before I started the site. I worked I was a marketing director at a Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America Association.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So yeah.
Wow, you
So
were at WSWA?
yes. Yep.
Wow.
In
So
DC.
your conferences were all white dudes,
All
all
white.
like in the
All
same
white.
blue and white collared shirts,
Yes,
all of them.
they were all white, and then the woman that would do our conference, she was a white woman, but it was all white, and it was and even like in the association I worked at, the only black people that we would see are always in marketing and communications.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was very, and I had different kind of hair, and so I would, it was the whole thing. But I know
Yeah.
that this industry is super white and it's
White, white.
male dominated.
Yeah.
How do you ever still get discouraged at times because you're in this world that
Never, never.
never?
I
Okay.
love it. I love it. So this is where I am very much like Oprah. I'm very much like Oprah in a lot of ways, but
Okay.
this is where I'm very, very much like Oprah, is that I love walking into a room with all white males, because
Okay.
who are they going to remember? You're looking at a sea of people who you've looked at your whole entire life. And then this black woman walks in with the confidence that surpasses all of these white men, because they will, I mean, and this is not a knock at all. If you ask a white man, like, honestly, what's your confidence level? Scale of 1 to 10. I don't care how high they are on the chain, even though they don't have a problem asking for jobs that they may not have earned, or for money that they may not be worth at that time. From a confident, like truly confidence, not putting on airs, not putting on true confidence level, most of them have a somewhat low confidence. And that's because going through school, kind of going up, they were always just sort of elevated above where they really had earned, right?
Yeah.
And so they
They would like
get
trip up,
into
like fail up
they
sometimes.
they would fail up. And so then they get into these big jobs, and it's like, whoa, why don't I know how to do this? It's because they didn't realize that they were kind of getting boosts the whole entire way, right? But then you have someone like me who had to be scrappy as hell to get every single penny, to get every single thing done. So I walk into a room with a level of confidence that is much higher than most of those white men in the room. And it causes them to pause and go, I don't know what she's got or what she knows, but I want that. And so for me, like, people who invested in me in the beginning, it wasn't black people, not that I wasn't pitching black people,
Mhm.
but it was, and I think that there's a whole just kind of history of us being pitted against each other. And it takes us a minute to trust
It
that
does.
one of us can build a business, because we've had more failures than we've had successes, right?
Yes.
And so there's more of a confidence in built and backing a non-black. And so all of my investors in the beginning, Jewish and Asian, all of them. And I'd literally walk in, and then my second round of investments is like almost all white, Jewish and Asian. But I'd walk into a space, and that was a part of it. They're like, we've never seen a Black woman with that level of confidence. And she's operating in an industry she's never been in, didn't know about before she got here, but they have a belief in my own belief in myself and my ability to get this done. And so for me, I love walking into a room full of white men. Love it.
That's rare to hear, Fawn. I'll say that.
Yeah, I know it is, but here's the thing is I think that's also what trips us up, right? Because we walk into those spaces, we feel uncomfortable. When you're talking about investors, they truly are like sharks with
Yes.
blood in the water. If they sense any kind of fear, oh, forget it. Whatever you're asking for, they're going to give you a fraction of it and require more because they sense that you lacked a sense of confidence around them. But for me, I don't. I feel absolutely equal and have no problem going toe to toe in terms of thought. And I think that that's really benefited me. I mean, you're talking about a person who had not added a single person to my board until my company was, wow, God, until I had raised over $75 million. I didn't have a, and the person who I added to my board, I appointed and I can remove.
Yeah.
That's something that is beyond uncommon, no
Yeah.
matter what your race is. But again, I think that you have all of these men, because I will tell you that 90 something high percentage of my investors are men. They look at me and they're like, we don't know what this chick has tapped into,
Right.
but whatever it is, we just want to be a part of this ride because this is either going to fail or it is going to be extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that's the risk they've all taken.
And I'm sure part of it is the fear of them missing out. You know, they have FOMO, I'm sure.
That's exactly right. And this is the other area where I said, I'm like, Oprah, is Gail has FOMO and Oprah says she has JOMO, the joy of missing out. I love missing out on every party, like when somebody cancels an invitation and they're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh girl, you just made my day. Are you kidding me? So yeah, I have JOMO. I
That's
have
so
no
funny.
FOMO, none,
That's
no
so
FOMO.
funny, which is rare as well. How involved are you with Uncle Nearest?
How involved? Well, right now I'm in the middle of 100 cities in 100 days CEO thank you tour. And every day I literally go to all of our top accounts in all of our cities just to say thank you and to showcase them. And but I oversee every aspect of this company.
Okay. Are there any other plans to launch another brand?
No, I've now invested in Sorel liqueur out of New York, phenomenal brand.
Mhm.
Equiano out of London. And also, we haven't announced it yet. It's out of New York, Hella Cocktails. The announcement's coming soon, so it's all good. And so we've put 5 million behind them. So for me, I'm going to keep finding black founded and black led brands that have the ability, whether they do it or not, but have the ability to do what I've done, which is to not fail and not sell. That want to see this continue to remain Black owned. There's actually one particular company where it's Black founded, Black led majority, but then there were white founders as well that were a part of it. And even in the negotiations for that, I would not back down that I had to have first right of refusal on any share that sold that would turn the company from being Black owned and led.
Okay.
That would take it from being BIPOC owned and led. It was like, and I mean, if you saw the way that the terms had to be done, it's no joke because it's like, if this person sells, I buy it. If this person sells, because keeping it BIPOC at over 50% was important to me.
Right.
And so my motivation in backing other brands is less monetary.
Mhm.
It's more trying to create. Uncle Nearest was the first spirit brand to be founded and led by a person of color that has succeeded in America. Like,
Yeah.
first one, which is crazy. And so now I look at it as my responsibility to go back and find others and help their path to be easier than mine, because my path has been anything but easy.
Mhm.
And so trying to kind of lessen the hurdles and the challenges that I have faced in the industry, try to make it a little easier and the path a little more straightforward than mine has been.
Are there still plans, or how far along are you on this potential movie for about Uncle Nearest, that telling that story?
Yeah. So we're actually The book is in the works at the very current moment, and we will let the book finish, and then we will look at the movie. But I actually have a film crew with me on this particular tour,
Or yeah, that makes
because
sense.
the likelihood that this will be a part of whatever the ultimate movie is in some shape or form is high.
Okay. I want to ask you some general life questions that have nothing to do with
Yeah, I
being an
love those.
entrepreneur. Okay. What keeps you up at night?
Nothing. Thank God. Nothing. I pray before I go to sleep and I take my ass to bed. No
Right.
issues.
You are a unicorn, Fawn. You are a unicorn. Okay.
But you know what? I also think that I stay in prayer more than most entrepreneurs that I have come across. So I don't let my day is not filled with worry. It really isn't. My day is focused on what is good, what is pure, what is noble, what are those things that I want in life. That's my focus. I have a strong belief that whatever you focus on grows. So I don't focus on the problems. I don't focus on the challenges. I focus on what I want to see grow. So
Okay.
because I'm focusing on that during the day, my mind at night continues to think about what it is that I want to grow. And it's all good.
Okay. 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 I'm taking that in too for my own stuff. Um, what's one vice you wish you could give up?
One vice I wish I could give up. Man, do I have vices? What is a vice that I have? I don't really have a vice. I
Okay.
don't, I mean, it sounds odd, but I've never done drugs. I've never smoked. It's, I guess you could consider alcohol a vice, but it's the business I'm in and I never get drunk. It's like, I don't even like being tipsy. So I drink until if I even feel like a little twitter in my head, I'm like, and I'm done.
Right.
Water, please.
Yeah, I understand.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I might think of one, but at the current moment, I can't think of a vice.
Okay. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Best compliment. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. I'm gonna tell you why it's terrible. Is I am, and I know you're gonna tell me I'm a unicorn in this as well. I don't really listen to people's compliments to me. Like I do a lot of press. I've done like you can Google and you're gonna get literally thousands,
Yeah, I've
right?
watched some videos, lots of videos.
I don't watch them, I don't read them. So for me, the way that I stay grounded is I really do not listen to the compliments of other people. Now, the upside of that is I also don't listen to the criticism.
Love.
So for me, I really do encourage myself. I'm not looking for this is something my husband had to get used to because he's like, babe, I'd come up with an idea and I'm like, man, that is phenomenal. He's like, babe, that's supposed to be something that someone else tells you. And I'm like, why? If I could tell myself, why would I wait for someone else to tell me something that I could tell myself? And so for me, I'd say the greatest compliment is one that I give myself, which is I could do whatever the hell it is that I want to do. And I am fully, fully, fully protected and secured and backed. And I feel it everywhere I go with everything that I do. And that's yeah. No, one thing I will say, my assistants tell me, which I actually do think is pretty cool, that they are learning from me is I really don't get swayed very much. Like things that worry them, like they'll get really worried about something, and I'll be like, it's gonna be what it's gonna be.
Right. Yeah.
And so I do have an ability to keep my eye on the big picture and really not get brought into the small stuff. The small stuff will always work itself out. I stay really, really focused on the big picture.
Okay. If you have one, what's your biggest professional regret?
My biggest profession. Oh my God. Oh, well, that one is really easy. Is with my first company, I hired so many people that the company itself could have done really well. And I could have grown that without massive stress because I was having to pay for all these people that I hired. And so for me, knowing what portion of it I can personally do and doing that and only hiring people for the parts that I can't do as well.
Okay.
That I've learned. So I wouldn't call it a regret, but I would call it a really, really important lesson that I have not duplicated.
Okay. What's one thing that you always wanted to try, but you are too scared to do?
Oh, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't. If I want to do it, I'm going to do it and just let the chips fall where they may. So I don't have anything. Now I can tell you there's a whole lot of stuff I have zero desire to do, like people jumping out of planes. I don't understand that. So I don't have those desires to do all these things that are like where people say do something that, that it scares you every single day. And I look at that as very differently. It's like do something that every single day pushes you beyond your limits,
Okay.
and I do that every single day, but it's not a scary thing for me. I'm used
Okay.
to it.
If you weren't in spirits industry, what would you be doing?
Probably PR and special events where I started.
Okay.
It's the interesting thing though is that if you look at how I've built this company, I had one of my SVPs told me the other day, he was like, "We're basically a PR firm that just happens to have whiskey," right? Because for me, I love talking to the press and to the media, and also giving them stories, y'all stories that people are interested in reading about and learning from and watching. And so I never have a thought process of I'm going to send a press release out and go to the press and have them talk about my product. That's never my focus. My focus is what is going to get that person the most views or the most readers or the most. And so it's my approach to PR is very different. It's very much so, how can I best help them? And I think that approach as a PR firm, even to this day, would still do really, really, really well.
Yeah, because I don't. Most publicists and people in PR don't really think that way.
They do not.
Yeah.
It's like, I got a product. You should talk about it. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why should I talk about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the best thing that happened to you this year?
I would say that we're still growing at a crazy pace. I'm on this tour, and I mean we bottle between 6,000 7,000 bottles a day of Uncle Nearest. We ship it out every single day. We've got trucks going all over this country. I can't find Uncle Nearest anywhere. Like it's sold out everywhere. And so I'd say the best thing outside of just hanging with my husband, because that's always my favorite thing in the world, but outside of that, the best thing is has been seeing this brand take off beyond me and my team, if that makes sense. Like there was a point where we knew every bottle that was being sold because we were either hand selling it or we had someone else that was hand selling. Like we knew the exact, but now it's like that tipping point where I'm walking around, people are rocking Uncle Nearest gear. I was just in Tulsa and I saw more people with Uncle Nearest gear, and I had never met any of them in my entire life. And so that to me is unbelievable. And every weekend that I'm at the distillery, people are coming in from all over the country, every background, every race. I'll literally sit in my office, watch these tours. They're sold out every 30 minutes. I'll watch them go past my office and I can literally look and say, that's a Trump supporter, that's an Obama supporter. And like they're all collectively having an incredible, meaningful time. And so that for me, being able to see something that I set into motion 5 years ago with the intention of being a brand and a company that was built by everybody for everybody. It's like Phoebe instead of Fubu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's like for everybody, but to actually see that happen. And I'm seeing that happen more this year than any other year. So that would probably be my favorite thing that's happened this year.
And I don't know if this is your temperament. When is the last time you cursed someone out?
Oh, that don't happen.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you the last time I cursed somebody out, Jerry's gonna kill me. It was Jerry. And it was 20 something years ago. I was so mad at something he did. And he was so floored because he had never heard me curse. But I hadn't cursed anybody out in probably the 10 years before that and haven't done it since. So
That's hilarious.
every now and again, a business partner will send you to the edge.
That's hilarious. What trend in the spirits industry would you like to see end?
To see it end.
Mhm. Like what trend are
Oh,
you not a fan of?
yeah, I'm not a fan of all the flavored stuff, but
Okay.
but the thing is that ending it, I don't. really care, I'm also not a fan of vodka. So if I would end anything, it'd be that whole entire category. I think it smells like rubbing alcohol, tastes like rubbing alcohol. Like it's on its face value, it should be on a wound under a band-aid. And so there's literally only one vodka I have ever had that I like legitimately enjoy. And it's a black guy out of Houston that
Mhm.
makes a vodka called Highway. And
Mhm.
he's making it out of hemp. And
Okay.
so it removes all of the kind of hemp-like type of qualities, but the oils from that versus potatoes
Yeah.
is the mouthfeel, the taste, the flavor. It is completely different than a traditional vodka, but it's still very much so. I was just in Houston have you ever been to Lucille's in Houston?
Mm-mm.
It historically black. Okay, phenomenal place. Well, the person who owns that, the brother who owns that, it's his brother that has this vodka. And I was just down there at the restaurant, and they had this lemon drop on the menu using Highway vodka, and I was like, I don't drink. I'll try it. It was phenomenal. So it
Mm.
still picks up the flavor like vodka does. But something to me about vodka, I'm like, we were all using it as hand sanitizer. I don't know that I
It
want to
gives me a
also drink
headache.
that. I can't listen.
Gives me a
I haven't
headache.
had enough. Yeah, I would end the entire category. I mean, it's a category that came over from Russia to begin with, and I'm
Right.
real excited to get rid of anything that started in Russia these days. So yeah,
Last question.
yeah.
If you had to pick one song as the soundtrack of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, thank you. It'd be two parts.
Okay.
It would be Thank You by Marvin Sapp. It would be Thank You by Marvin Sapp. That would be
But you said two
that.
parts. What's the other part?
The other one was Thank You by Maverick City.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Sorry. So it's basically I'm so grateful to God because I look at all of the stuff that could have and should have taken me out. And not only am I still standing, but I'm not afraid that something is going to take me out. And so for me, every day, all day, it is thank you all day, every day. That's the soundtrack, not just of my life. That's the soundtrack of this moment, of every moment, because I know without question I shouldn't be here. Without question.
Well, this is the perfect way to end this interview. It was a pleasure talking to you. I would love to do this again, like maybe
Yeah.
on live to talk about something else. I mean,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is so important in terms of women and women of color. So I definitely want to do something else later down the line. And if you ever need anything from us,
I would love to.
just let me know.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you. And if you need anything from me, let me know. I appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.